what's the other guy's hair look like?
This one.
Oh, cute, sweet. Uh-oh. Yeah, sweet. Awesome, thank you. So I'm definitely going to be able to do 2 different looks today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this is Jared, and you had said you were going to do one longer look and a closer skin fade. So Jared will be a longer length.
A longer length.
A longer
And
length.
Sam normally wears his, I
Okay.
make him grow his hair. So I'm sure he's wanting to kill me right now. Is normally quite short.
So you're trying to grow your hair.
No, he's not. No.
You
I
are.
literally don't care. You do everything.
I'm indifferent.
You're indifferent. Okay, okay. Okay, cool. Scratch that idea. Yeah.
I like having my hair cut. You can do it. We'll fade.
Cool. No, we're gonna get your results. Okay. So, to me, if I want to create like quite like a high, maybe not a tight, okay, but I would definitely want to expose a little bit of skin and give them a really, really sharp looking shape. I'm going to do a freehand clipper technique, okay? But to create a high and tight, what do you think is the highest section you can have on the head shape?
Crown.
What was that?
The crown.
The crown? Crown where? Like,
That's the
would I
highest
do a
part.
horseshoe or would I, like,
Oh, then your front would probably be the highest part.
the where?
Your,
Center part?
yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Cool, that's exactly what I was looking for. So instead of doing like maybe your typical horseshoe, I'm gonna go in and do a center part. Because to me, this is allowing me to bring more of the top of the head to build up the sides. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Instead of having my shape way down here, now I can actually have it from way up here. This freehand clipper technique is my absolute favorite way to cut hair. I find it the best way to create consistency. And the guys that come in to see me that do this kind of technique are in to see me weekly, okay? I think this is really important. It's the quickest way that I find to cut hair, and it always turns out wonderful. I think the biggest kind of thing we've got to keep in mind is unnecessary over-direction. When we're talking about like an inch section, pulling long hair way up to here, when you sandwich a bit of hair, you don't really notice it. But when you're talking hair that's cut so short, when you sandwich hair, you really notice it, okay? So unnecessary over-direction is really like something to keep in mind, okay? Freehand means there's no elevation, no over-direction, no tension. So I find I'm gonna get the best results with this. I also like to disinfect my tools, or my clippers at least, every time I use them. Every guest. And then I oil them because I will say the downfall to using these clippers is that they tend to get hot quicker, okay? So you gotta make sure that you put a little bit of oil on it. But I will say this will cut your cutting time in half. They're gonna be heavier, but is it really that much heavier when you're doing half the amount of work with them? Right? If you're gonna use it for half the amount of time, it's not gonna be so grueling on your body.
What brand is that?
This one's an Andis. Andis BGR Plus. I will say that wall supports me quite a bit, but they don't have a cordless detachable blade clipper. I find it really important. I like cordless because I have so many clippers that it all gets tangled. I got 3 clippers, 1 trimmer, and a blow dryer that's running all the time. So if I have, 5 cords, like they just get so tangled up, so tangled.
What's the price point on that, like ballpark?
This is definitely about $350. Just so I'll get it all down the chest.
Philip, what made you decide to use this technique on your model?
The first thing is because I feel like his hair is quite short. The other is because, like looking at him, I see a little bit of scalp up through kind of the top. You know, I find when you're able to see scalp on the top, I want to see scalp on the sides too, because sometimes it really just exaggerates how there's no hair somewhere. Okay, I'm not necessarily saying he's balding, but I can definitely see some scalp exposure. So I want to be able to at least even it out, or make it lighter underneath so that it looks fuller up top. To me, it's all about illusions. And who asked that? I don't know who I'm looking at.
Yeah.
All right, so simple, simple, simple. What I'm gonna do, turn on my clipper. How can I do this so everyone can kind of see? I'm gonna hold on to his head because I don't want him to move. I'm gonna put my blade flat on his face. And I'm gonna work in a vertical panel. And as I move all the way up the head shape, you're gonna feel the transfer of weight from the toe of my blade to the heel. And I'm gonna follow through all the way to the sky. Okay? Does that all make sense? Was that simple? Okay? So now when I really look at what I'm doing, for one, I try and I complete one panel before I move to the next. Okay? If my first panel is not complete or perfect, I shouldn't move on to the next because that's my guide. And without a perfect guide, how can you create a perfect haircut? Okay? But now as well, if you look at the transfer of scalp exposure to scalp coverage and that gradient in between, that's not created by some fancy work that I'm doing. That's created by the shape of his head. All I'm doing is going vertical, okay? And then that's really about it. Does that make sense? I'm not like pulling away. Wherever my clipper goes, the hair is gonna be cut. So if I just go in a nice straight manner, I'm gonna create nice, clean, simple shapes. Okay? Now when I go to do my second pass, half of my blade is cutting and the other half is following my guide. And then look, weird, there's a hair that didn't get cut. You know what that tells me? It tells me there wasn't enough tension for the length of hair that was. So what do I do for that? I go in over comb, I pick it up to stabilize it so I can remove it. Like I said, I go panel to panel, creating a perfect guide along the way. All right? And another thing I'm going to say is you notice I'm working really slow and methodical. I'm not like doing something like that. I think that's great for refinement and for like fading, but I'm putting in my shape right now. I'm not really fading. Now, I might want to bring the back of his haircut a little bit higher than the sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tilt his head towards me a little bit, because now that's going to allow me to push that baseline a little bit higher. Go back over it again. Yeah, there we go.
Why are you having him go back?
because it's easier to push that weight a little bit more central. If his head was tilted forward, here, this is the easiest way to do it. All right, he's looking forward, okay? He's looking straight. I'm gonna create this kind of shape. If he tilts his head towards me, I'm gonna push that weight a little bit more narrow. If he tilts his head away from me, I'm gonna create a buildup of weight. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Instead of me kind of trying to chase the hair, I put the hair exactly where I want it. So it makes it easier for me. I think these clippers are so important, you know? They do a lot of great work with such ease. All right, tilt your head back. Any questions? Am I working too quick? Am I working too slow? Does this make sense? Like
It does, you know what, is when you, I never did that, like I would never bring the guide over, I wouldn't think of even doing that. I just would have the blade on and not, I wouldn't think.
Right? Love it.
That
Really,
makes sense.
it's all like, we're always taught about following a guide, right? You think of hair school, we bring a section down, we have a guide. I think because we're all trained as hairstylists, we always think of hair lying down. And the moment the hair sticks out, we have absolutely no clue what to do with it. You know, we don't know where our guide is, all of that. So I think learning a technique that you're able to see a guide and to be able to follow a guide is where you're going to be able to create your consistency and your confidence.
Oh, that does, it totally
Right.
makes sense, yeah.
How much do you charge for your full haircut experience?
55 for 45 minutes. So every time you see little hairs that aren't getting cut, like I said, there's not enough tension for them to get cut through the clipper freehand. So then that's when you use your comb to be able to stabilize it. Okay?
So if you wanted, if you guess one, say we go longer, would you just automatically go to a number 2, or would you clipper over comb?
Okay. To me, clipper over comb.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do shorter than a 2. So if I wanted to go half a smidge longer than a 1,
Yeah.
I would maybe change it to a 1A blade and do the same technique.
Okay.
But the moment I go to a number 2, the technique is completely different. And I'll probably show this kind of technique on him. Okay. I would do more of a baseline where I start in the middle. Okay. So I would do my 1 plus 1 to create 2. So I go in, I create my corner, take my pass.
Yeah.
That would be my baseline. I have this kind of weird looking mullet underneath. Then I could go, and then that's where I would put like a 2 blade on and just gut everything out underneath. Because it's gonna blend perfectly, because it's 1 and 1. So once I put a 2 blade, the reason I really say blade is because a number 2 guard is gonna be slightly different length. It's gonna be a smidge longer than a 2 blade.
So with those blades, like, what do you have, like 4 or 5 that are that
The
you
ones
use
that I use
on a regular?
on a regular, okay, number 1 is 90% of my work, okay, because that's what I do clipper over comb.
Yeah.
That's what I do most of my freehand clipper technique. For the random guy that wants slightly longer than a 1, I have a 1A for it. Okay? I do have a 2 for when people want to do that baseline with a number 2 length. And I have a balding blade, which is 5-0. Okay?
Yeah.
Other than that, I only use those attachments for those reasons I explained. But everything between my balding and my number 1, I use an adjustable blade clipper for. Okay? Because there's no guard that can go shorter than a 1. You know, so I have to change the tool that I use. And then, like I said, I haven't talked about snapping on any kind of guard yet. I really only use that for blending. And like you might kind of notice that these clippers leave a little bit of like fuzz left behind sometimes. You know, I find I go in and always refine my work with the tool that's best for refining, which is my adjustables. Because I always blend out the neckline. Neckline, I blend in with the facial hair, whatnot. I do not ever put a blocked hairline. Okay. I've never had a person ask me to block their neckline out, and I'm never going to offer it. Okay, because for one, the craftsmanship is far better. It's going to grow out better. Okay, I think there's a lot to be said to just blend it out. Okay, it's a lot nicer. When their haircut starts looking bad, you start looking bad.
Is there anything that can be done for men that have sensitive skin and that have lumps and bumps to kind of like minimize the irritation when you're using a clipper?
My biggest thing about that, I have no clue, okay? But what my initial thought is using a clipper aggressively is gonna hurt them. You know, it's gonna irritate them. But when you're going real, like I'm not pushing very hard on his head. Am I pushing hard on his head? No. Does it irritate you? No. You know, so if you're going gentle and working slow and methodically, I don't think you have to worry about like having them flare up or anything.
What would you do if a man's hairline continues like down his back? Like how do you
Oh.
run that?
Oh.
Sorry. Where do you stop? Like you get
You're lucky, we're in luck. Oh, we're so
I've got some very
yeah, like I guess I can talk about that now.
that you send upstairs to the spa.
To me, same kind of idea as blocking out a hairline. You know, I want to be able to go as low as his shirt will allow me, because I don't know what he's doing tomorrow or whatnot. Like maybe he's going to the gym and he likes to wear a tank top to the gym because he likes to show his muscles.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to go lower than anything he's going to wear so that it doesn't look like I just lined up his back,
Yeah.
you know? And it looks like he's got this t-shirt now all of a sudden. Exactly. So I like to go quite low. Another thing I didn't mention is I always work right to left. Is anyone left-handed? Is anyone left-handed? No? Okay, good. Because you can't do it any other way. But the reason I always start on the right is because I'm always going to have a guide. So if I work right to left, I have my cut hair into my ball. My guide to my ball, my guide to my ball. If I'm right-handed and I start on the left, I can create my guide, but once I go to my next section, I'm going from my ball into my guide. So I'm kind of guessing. I'm not following the roadmap that I've created. Okay? So that's why I always work right to left. this hair is wet, I'm gonna go and just do the top. So that once the bottom, well, even though the bottom's already dry, once it all starts to dry, I can just refine everything at the bottom, blend out his hairline, okay? I go from one tool to the next. I won't be picking up my detachable, okay? Those are done now. Does this make sense? It's simple, it's direct, you can see it works, right? Now, with that same center parting, I'm going to create a T-shaped section. Call this an orange slice, because typically it's a horseshoe up on top. So then with just a straight line, you can get your total head back like this. Okay? You can see how it's a T shape, and this is kind of like an orange slice on the bottom. Nice and easy, nice and simple. Okay, keep your head up. Yeah, straight. Now, you can take a 3/4 inch section and elevate. Now I'm going to cut short to long. Right? So I'm using the guide from my corner of my clippered work. Okay? And then I'm just like creating my guide, finding out how much length I want to maintain in the center. Kind of at this point creating a faux hawk, which later on we will refine so that it's not a faux hawk. This is going to be called a faceted layering technique. Does anyone know what a facet is? Or what contains facets? What? Wait, sorry?
Diamonds do.
There we go. That is the exact answer I'm looking for. So we're going to give him some sort of a diamond-looking haircut, all right? If I think of a diamond, this to me is kind of like his face shape, okay? Maybe his ears are somewhere around here, all right? Then you create your buildup of weight through the sides. Now I just created this kind of inward taper, and then I'm going to create that on the other side, and I'm going to cut that top off. And then he's going to bling like a diamond. Does that make sense though?
Yeah.
Is it true you never do a men's cut more like rounded on the sides? You usually generally just go straight up until you reach the weight line?
Try to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it just looks more masculine on a man than to do anything with your fingers like more rounded.
Yeah. But same thing, if a guy's really chiseled, maybe he can use a little bit of roundness.
Okay.
But I'm not saying it's a yes or no, but typically you want some sort of corner. And you can always bring shapes more narrow. A lot of people call that rounded, but you can, if you think, well, my comb is straight, if I create a shape this way, I'm still going to be able to create a corner, you know? If I cut it here, well, there's still a corner right over here. So, does that kind of answer the question? Yeah. All right, so working now 1/2 inch sections all the way to the front, traveling from the back. This is where the unintentional over-direction comes into play. You don't want to be pulling the hair back too much or moving too forward. I just like, because the hair is so short, I just push it forward slightly so that when I pull it back, I'm going to be right where I want my guide to be. Now, once I get to about the recession area, I'm going to start to over-direct everything to the recession area, just so I can have a little extra length in the front to play with when we're done. Now, everything was picked up this way. What do I have to do next?
Go
Got
back.
it. Exactly. So now I shouldn't have any guessing here because I've created a guide on the other side and I've got my guide right here. So now I'm really just connecting the dots. Point A to point B, and done, all right? The only biggest difference here is it's really awkward to work this way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get him to look at my chest and then tilt forward ever so slightly. Now this brings the hair to me.
We have clients that start out that way and then they end up looking over at the other side when you're halfway down. How do you sort of combat that problem with not getting someone to kind of cooperate?
I just keep pushing their head back exactly where it needs to be. If they're not listening, I keep manhandling it. You know, you got to do what you got to do to get the job done right. I will also say I don't talk a lot when I cut hair. I talk when I'm teaching when I cut hair, but really I'm not going to have you like spitting jokes the whole time so you're laughing, and I'm just creating gouge after gouge after gouge. Okay. So I'm really quiet when I work. I apologize for it and I say, hey, I'm just really focusing, and they're like, oh, I really appreciate it, man. Sometimes I feel people like forget what they're doing while they're talking to me, so I really appreciate it. Now, after I've created my faux hawk, I'm going to come through the center, and I should have a point right down the center, which I do. Okay. I'm going to remove that point to create my facet. Everything so far is clear, understandable. Okay. Any questions? Awesome. So you understand everything.
So why did you choose this haircut again? Like, what makes you decide, like, the style for a guy?
To be honest, the biggest thing that I would say that really, like, to me, this is a short haircut. I feel he's going to be better suited to do a long haircut because he has more hair. Okay? So I also felt that this is kind of like your kind of typical guy who gets like a short haircut, you know? So I want to use like a generic kind of hair cutting technique because it's going to give me a really simple shape, which is going to work on like the majority of the people. Okay? And especially because like it was cut quite uniform, so it gave me a lot of opportunity to be able to like go from really short to long. You know, he's not balded out, but
Is it
it's
the most common men's cut you would normally do then in your
oh yeah,
barber? Okay.
yeah. Like honestly, like this,
So do you
I
separate?
feel this kind of a haircut is where barbershops reign supreme.
Okay.
Okay, like really short haircuts. Because once the hair starts sticking up, a lot of us stylists don't know what to do with it. You know, because we get scared because we're so used to these long layers that lie down. And now it's sticking up, we're like, holy God, what are we doing here? You gotta look at it from a silhouette point of view. It's not about creating straight lines down here anymore. It's about creating straight lines here. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, for the crown. For how this is cut, I want to really listen to the crown. The crown is going to tell me how it needs to be cut. So I comb it in the direction it wants to lie down. If I comb it this way and it's not lying down, that's not where it's going to live. Okay? So I try really hard to find exactly that point, and then I start to take pie sections from that point.
Is that how you would work through a whirl that would stick straight up at the back?
Yeah. The biggest thing about a whirl, point of distribution, a crown, whatever you want to call it, it's got to be the longest point, basically, right in the center of that crown for it to lie down. Okay? Because you need all that weight for it to lie down. If it's really long and you're wearing it back, like here, it's not as big of a deal. But when you're going this short, it's got to be the longest right in the center. But with that being said, if I was to cut, because I'm cutting it all relative to where it lies down, if I was then to do all of that and pick up the crown and cut that point off, boom, I've just cut the point shortest in the middle and it's going to pop up on us. So you don't have to double check this way because everything isn't relevant to the middle of the point of distribution. It's relevant to where it's lying down. You can't make both relevant. So I just keep working around my point of distribution. There might not be much hair coming off. So, because he's got finer, blonder hair, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some firm hold gel. Can someone answer why I would do that? Based on what I said earlier. Or what I just said. I gave you the answer.
Wet set.
What?
Wet
No.
set.
Yes, exactly. There you go. We said that. Ding, ding, ding. Another thing I'm going to say that is kind of like indifferent to what I'm doing right now, but a lot of guys come in and say, oh, I just want a number 2 up to here and whatever, right? So we do a section up to here and we do a 2 there. How can we guarantee that a number 2 is long enough to fill in the void to create a corner? A 2 is very short. So you really, like, this is not a number 2 up through here. This is probably like a number 8. I don't even know what number like this would be. You know, it's irrelevant. So really, the number 2 should be focused here, not up through here. Okay?
On certain hair types, would you go back through with your blending shear and blend that corner from lower the
Not really the corner. No, no, the corner is what's going to completely change everything. Yeah, that corner is important. But I will go in with my blending shears because this is how I refine everything. I want to see if anything's sticking out of place. Perfect example. You can see these random hairs. Can you see it against my black shirt? Right in this area where I over-directed and now it's super, super long. See that stuff? I go in with my blending shears. Do you see how I can pull that hair? I'm actually physically moving it. So as I go in, I just do a couple snips. I can create a nice straight line. Now, those hairs are gone. See that? I feel if I was to use my straight blade, I would always be chasing the hair. Where this actually feeds the hair into my cutting tool. When I come in through the top, I'm just going to do a little bit of blending shear over comb, just to kind of cross-check, to refine my work, really. this is where I get really nice silhouettes. Because really, if you think about the head shape, I find when we're picking it up vertically, we always have some sort of a roundness because the head is naturally round. So doing stuff over comb just really helps you solidify a nice square shape.
Would you be mindful of how you hold your comb, obviously, like the same way you held your fingers?
Yeah, just the only difference is I'm holding from underneath.
Okay.
When I do clipper over comb, scissor over comb, whatever, on top of the head, instead of holding it like this, I go underneath. Make sense? Same idea with my clipper. On the side of the head, it's like so. On the top of the head, it's like so. Cool. And really, I'm not going deep on this. Like, you really have to understand this tool. Okay? A lot of people I know are scared to use them, and we've been told not to use them for so long. But there is a really good, they're a great tool. They're a wonderful tool, and they help with a lot of things. But I'm literally just hitting the ends, and I'm almost making it thicker. One last thing, because it's a high and tight, I go to my fade blade. Now I just work into his facial hair, into my previously cut. I'm not too worried to go into what I was cutting because my blade and this blade are calibrated to the same length with it open. So literally it's just for refinement right now. Seeing if there's any hairs I missed. You really want to be careful with how high you're going because you don't want to compromise the shape you just created. The moment you go in and you make a gouge, you got to fix it. That's more time spent, okay? So you got to be very careful as to how high you're going so that you don't compromise your already created shape. I'm just refining. I don't want to have to go in and fix anything substantial. Now I feel the sides blend quite nicely with his facial hair, so I'm going to tilt his head forward. I'm going to close my blade halfway. I'm going to work from his neck hair into his mastoid bone. And I'm just going to kind of, rock my blade off of that surface. I'm pivoting off of that bone. The pivot is what creates the really nice silhouette. If we're flicking too much, we're going to create some lines. Unless you really want like a shape like this, that's great. But when it's a high and tight, it's unnecessary. There's a lot of extra work. Okay. Another thing I'll say is, have you heard of the flick of the wrist? Yeah? Not the song, but like the actual motion. Well, what have I talked about with our combs and holding our scissors and all that? It's to not use your wrist, right? So I like the idea of the flick of the wrist, just not actually flicking the wrist. I use my fingers to do that same motion. Because the more I can keep my wrist stable, the longer it's gonna last, okay? So when I need to do something like that, I'm doing more of that kind of a motion than this kind of a motion. When it comes to my trimmer work, this is all for refinement. So I'm gonna work from in front of the ear to the back of the ear. I'm not scared to go in and clean up their ears. I've even started plucking nose hair out when I'm doing shaves. I don't do the wax thing, but I'll shave inside the nose, and I will also pluck any random hairs I can't get with my razor. I think guys appreciate it. It hurts in the moment, but at least they don't have to worry about it later. And you know, he doesn't really have a hairy back, so I just feel fine going to like his shirt, just underneath his shirt line.
Will you ever use like a straight blade to do like a lineup and stuff like that, or
Not really. The sharper the lines, the quicker things grow out. I'm not gonna say I'll never do it, but really on this guest alone, probably not, because his hair is already so blonde. There's no real way I'm gonna create a straight line, because I should have left a lot more bulk, stuff like that. But if things are more natural, they're gonna grow out far better.
how long would people ask for like a hard part, or to get like a really crisp, clean line? Would you use a blade?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I don't say I don't. I'll try to talk them out of that, because I'm really over that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they really want it. Like, I guess one thing I haven't done, if you're into it, if I have enough, here, let me pass out some cards. Like, if you want to check out my work, you'll see some stuff I do straight razor lines with. You'll see some stuff that's natural. Here, why don't you pass these around? So now, product selection, I'm going to go straight for the thickening paste, because he does have finer blonde hair. When I apply it vigorously. I'm not scared. I'm not just like patting him.
Sorry to ask again, because I went to the back. You were saying the preference when you use what style of product. Again, why would you use gel on the
Oh, because I want his hair to look thicker. Yeah, because it's more of a matte finish on his blow dry, it's going to make it look thicker. If I use grooming cream, it's going to have too much oil in it. I feel it's going to make him look greasy. Kind of like you just rinsed him off at the sink, but now he has to wear that all day.
Why does the gel make it look thicker?
Just because it's more matte.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's drier in general. What's that?
I tend to use a lot of gel and pomade.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess, for that look and hold
I-
that creates.
I would just say for that, I would like to use that on like darker, like I would never put pomade on him. Just because the shine's gonna make him look thinner. Yeah, how's this? Is that all right? Is that look all right? It's a simple, everyday, salon-friendly haircut. I could do this in a half an hour for sure. You know, so, and it's all because of the technique I used. All right. Thanks for letting me chop your hair off. Do you want to wash it?
Do you want me to wash it?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great. How's that? Any questions?